Good morning, Stephanie. Wait. What?
Hey!
Travis?
You'd be amazed at what can happen in a week.
My mistake. My eyesight was bad apparently. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, for slumming it with Chris and I here
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
Because there was so much to get into yesterday. I mean, there was like the January 6th hearing yesterday, but as well as like a couple of bombshells that dropped during it. And I want to get to both of those really quickly here first. First of all, the first thing we heard before the hearing was that January 6th committee decided that they were interested in Jenny Thomas coming in to testify before them. Yeah. And then Jenny Thomas turned around and said, well, I would love to tell my side of the story. And so they sent her
to clear up any misconceptions.
That's correct.
Is what she said.
And they sent her a very polite letter inviting her to come in a couple of weeks. What do you think about that development?
I think it's interesting. I think we'd all like to hear from Jenny Thomas. I think they will probably have one of the best members of the investigative team, one of the former federal prosecutors who has done a whole lot of cross-examining of hostile witnesses, ask her the questions. That's what I would do if I was involved in this investigation, because look, she's going to come in and she is going to paint the rosiest possible picture of what she did and what she didn't do. And I'm sorry, I will not believe her unless and until she is cross-examined aggressively and she is confronted with all documentary evidence, including her own text messages. This will not be a polite, superficial, easy breezy questioning of a friendly witness. This is about getting to the truth. So I would say hold on tight if she really shows up to testify.
One thing, talking about Jenny Thomas, one of the things that came up yesterday when I believe it was Greg Jacob, who is Pence's lawyer, he said that he confronted Eastman saying, if this goes to the Supreme Court, it's not going to end well. And Eastman made the statement, it would be a 7-2 decision, and then he kind of backtracked and went to 9-0. That 7-2 decision, we're talking Thomas and Alito, right?
Yeah, and then I saw some follow-up, maybe an 8-1 even, just with Thomas as the holdout. But, everything we learned about John Eastman's involvement in this criminal scheme to overturn the election's results, and the part that really sort of knocked the constitutional wind out of me is even after the attack on the Capitol, he is still pushing this criminal scheme, which, if he doesn't land in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, courtesy of what he did and what we learned about what he did yesterday, then there is no justice.
Let's talk about that in clip number 15, real quick.
And the speeches that the majority and minority leaders had been allowed to make also violated the Electoral Count Act because they hadn't been counted against the debate time. And then he implored me, now that we have established that the Electoral Count Act isn't so sacrosanct as you have made it out to be, I implore you one last time, can the Vice President please do what we've been asking him to do these last 2 days? Suspend the joint session, send it back to the states.
So that was John Eastman saying that, hey, you guys already violated the Electoral Count Act because you let debate go longer than 2 hours because it was interrupted by mob violence, by an insurrection, a mob threatening to kill the Vice President of the United States. That's what you were referencing there. What did you think about that statement?
Yeah, I think you just translated lawyer speak into real person speak, Travis. What that email says is you've already broken the law to try to corruptly install Donald Trump for a second term. Just keep at it. What's the downside? You've already violated the law. Violate the law again, and let's finish this democracy. That's what the substance of that email is communicating.
I also think that, and you might be able to speak to this more than I will, there's a lot of talk about the violence versus the coup. And how are these things tied together? Some emails that came out earlier this week, CNN was talking about this, an email between Eastman and Cheesebro. And in that email, Eastman said, the odds of action before January 6th will become more favorable. It's talking about the Supreme Court getting involved in this. Odds of action before January 6th will become more favorable if the justices start to fear that there will be wild chaos on January 6th unless ruled by them. So I mean, they were talking about violence. Do you think that was that something that was planned ahead when he said to him, well, you've already delayed the debate by 2 hours. You've already violated the electoral vote count act.
Yeah, I think at a minimum they were comfortable exploiting chaos and violence to their criminal ends, whether it was their goal all along from jump or it was just a pleasant byproduct of the way things played out. This was not a sort of one path coup. They were exploring all possible paths, none of which were viable, none of which were lawful. But I think they were hoping that one would win the day, or they would converge in ways that perhaps they couldn't fully predict. But you put your finger right on it. They were happy to either encourage and inspire violence as a means to their end, or once they saw that's part of what was unfolding, they were happy to exploit it, to kind of run with it and to use it to their advantage.
Right, and then also it gets into the idea of, let's do a clip number 16 here. Eastman asking for a pardon.
Dr. Eastman emailed Rudy Giuliani and requested that he be included on a list of potential recipients of a presidential pardon. Dr. Eastman's email stated, quote, "I've decided that I should be on the pardon list, if that is still in the works." Dr. Eastman did not receive his presidential pardon.
Glenn, you've talked a lot about pocket pardons and who may or may not have them. Just in regards to Eastman, what do you think about that consciousness of guilt?
That is almost better than a confession to crime. And here's why I say that. When somebody confesses to a crime, 15 seconds on how it usually plays out. You're arrested, you're Mirandized, you waive your Miranda rights, advising you that you have the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. You waive those rights, you agree to be interrogated, and ultimately you confess to the crime. When we go into court, you know what every defense attorney and defense team will argue? That confession was coerced. It was involuntary. It was improper. It was in violation of the law in one way or another. When you request a pardon, there's no coercion. Nobody forced you to request. That comes from within, based on your belief that you committed a crime and its consciousness of guilt. And the only way you can get away with your crime is if the president pardons you. There is no coercive police conduct anywhere near John Eastman's request for a pardon. And, and here's the other thing, and I don't want to run on too long about this, but I believe we're going to begin to see these pardons being pulled out of back pockets. Kellyanne Conway said in her book, if these are not alternative facts,
yes.
She said in her book, Donald Trump ambled up to me at the end of his term and said, her word, honey, hey, honey, you want a pardon? Everybody needs one. Are we to believe he didn't give his friends and family members pardons if he offered an unsolicited blanket pardon to Kellyanne Conway? And here's the really interesting piece that we learned yesterday. John Eastman requested a pardon, did not get a pardon. So when he went into the J6 committee, he pled the Fifth.
Right.
He invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because he didn't have a pardon to protect him. Who else went into the J6 committee and testified? Don Jr., Ivanka, Rudy, and Jared, and Travis, none of them pled the Fifth. What does that mean? That suggests, we can infer, they have the protection of a pocket pardon. We don't know that for sure, but there are more data points coming in every day that convinces me Trump handed out a bunch of pardons that bypassed the office of the pardon attorney, the normal processes by which we vet pardons, and they're going to get pulled out at some point when people start getting indicted.
It feels to me like he had like a little Pez dispenser with a Trump head on it, and he was just offering them to anyone who would take them. With these pocket pardons, what actually has to go into a pardon? Can he just give them a handwritten note, you're pardoned? Because if they didn't go through the normal processes, how are we to know that these were actually issued or given in a timely manner while he was still president of the United States even?
So anybody who's interested can go to DOJ's website and read about the Office of the Pardon Attorney and what the procedures are if a law-abiding president chooses to follow the normal procedures when somebody applies for a pardon. But you know what? all of that is waivable by the president. None of it has the force of law. It's a Norman tradition.
Exactly.
It's a standard operating
was not
procedure.
into.
We've already heard Jared testify. I had my nose buried in a pile of pardons, and that's why I didn't pay any attention to the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, who was saying, I'm going to resign if Trump keeps this up. He said he was just whining, and it was a distraction because I was busy getting pardons out. This is Pardongate, and this thing is going to stink to high heaven.
Okay. All right. And so there's no way of verifying how the validity of these.
No, what will happen is if Trump says, yeah, I wrote this one on a cocktail napkin, I scrawled this one on a Snickers wrapper, then you have to go into court and challenge them, and we have to have evidentiary hearings to see if they are legitimate or if they're fraudulent, and then a court will have to decide. That's why we have to get into court on these issues.
Yeah.
We need precedent. We need law. We need to take maiden legal voyages. Let a federal judge decide whether unrecorded pardons are a thing, are valid.
And that
Are
hasn't
we
been
willing
adjudicated
to
yet.
accept them.
Right. And that hasn't been adjudicated yet, as of yet, in the entire 250-year history of our country.
Nope, it has not.
And the Constitution provides no method for pardons. It just says the president can pardon.
The president shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons except in cases of impeachment. So he can't pardon somebody if they have been impeached.
Okay.
He can't wipe away
Right.
an impeachment. And of course, pardons only apply to federal crimes, not state crimes.
Right. Right.
And I wanted to ask you, this was something that I got to thinking about yesterday. They talked about with Eastman, well, what's to stop, what was stopping Al Gore from doing this in 2000, or what's to stop Kamala Harris from using this same method of overturning the election in 2024? And I worry with what we're seeing right now with these MAGA candidates getting elected, especially in Secretary of State offices and things like that, that we could be walking into a situation where Harris literally has to make a decision because the Secretary of State has said, hey, no, the vote was corrupt in our state. We're going to have the whatever state representation, whether it's the House, Senate, assemblies, whatever their state governance is, decide on who the winner of the election was in our state and send the delegates that we think should be right as opposed to what is reflected in the vote. If that were to happen, what would Kamala Harris do in that situation? Or what? It just makes me wonder where we at with this, because I feel like they're setting us up for a trap in 2024.
She will follow the law, and it's hard to answer the question, what law will apply and what might she have lawful and constitutional authority to do if she starts getting literally state certified fake electors, because that's where we had, this is what saved us. We had fake electors submitted this go round, but they weren't state certified. So it was actually legally and constitutionally speaking an easy call for Pence. Didn't seem to be easy for him to make the right call because he had to resort to calling Dan Quayle. Like, Dan, are you sure I can't do this? But he did it. And what I can tell you is I'm confident Kamala Harris will follow the law, but it depends on what form these elector certificates take. What I do believe, Travis, is there will be court battle after court battle after court battle if state secretaries of state begin to literally certify fake electors that do not represent the will of the voters in those states. You're going to have court battles. I fear it's going to kind of move us toward a constitutional crisis where the question you just asked, what can Kamala Harris do, won't necessarily have a direct, ready answer, and that spells trouble. And I think we got some foreshadowing from Judge Ludig yesterday saying, look, this was about to plunge us not only into a constitutional crisis, but a revolution.
Yeah, we played his audio earlier in the show, and I do want to just, as we wrap up here, part of the January 6th committee's mandate is to propose legislation. And we talked about this earlier. Is there anything that you can see in the legal realm that they can propose as far as reforming elections or to keep this from happening in the future based on what we've seen so far? And this may not be your area of expertise, but
it's not my area of expertise, and I try not to pretend to know more than I do. There are lots of legislative guardrails I think they can erect, but here's the challenge. We have all sorts of law on the books that should have channeled the authority of a Bill Barr, for example. And instead, he, being the chief law enforcement officer of the country who was supposed to faithfully execute the laws of the nation, weaponized DOJ to, among other things, reward Donald Trump's criminal associates and punish his perceived enemies. So I have never been a proponent of saying more legislation is the be-all and end-all, because aspiring autocrats and the corrupt attorneys general they appoint can always disregard whatever laws are on the books. So this doesn't just take legislation. This takes accountability. It takes indictments. It takes prosecutions.
And it also takes the will of the American people to make sure that we vote and get out the vote and do these in numbers that they cannot reverse or change or overturn.
Too big to rig, too real to steal.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yes, we need that on a bumper sticker.
All right. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. I know you got up early this morning so you could be with us.
Yes.
Have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks, Chris. I'll see you guys next week.
You got it.
All right, thank
Bye.
you so much.
All right.
All right.
President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. President Trump is wrong. Wrong. President Trump is wrong. Wrong. President Trump is wrong. Wrong. Trump is wrong. Wrong. President Trump is wrong. President Trump is wrong. 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 President Trump is wrong.
Please visit letmajorityrule.org to learn more. That's letmajorityrule.org. Letmajorityrule.org is a project of the Marvin Lucas Super PAC, which is responsible for and paid for this ad and is not affiliated with or authorized by any political campaign or candidate or candidates committee.